On this episode, we're talking about ignition, distributors, coils. So these are probably the most popular coils. This is the, I want to say 40-year-old Bosch. Okay, I don't know how old it is, but you know, Bosch is, well, maybe it says. It does not. And then we have Bertone X flamethrower, Excel, MSD Blaster 2, and the Fast PS60. So the instructions they vary from product to product. With Excel, all you get's a sticker and a warning label. You put this on your car if you live in California. This is for the MSD if you live in California. For some reason. MSD tells you how to hook it up, but if you have a ballast resistor, then they want you to run a ballast resistor. So these are all 1.5 ohm coils. They are for breakerless distributors. If you have points, then you're going to be running a 3 ohm coil. And then we have to talk about ballast resistors and all that kind of stuff. Why do you do a ballast resistor? What does it do? If we look at these coils and we measure them, we can measure the resistance across the poles. So I've got 0.2 ohms of resistance in the wires. And then if we go to the Bosch, the original, it's at 1.6, but minus 2. So it's a 1.4. We should write that down. The Bertone X coil is 1.5 or 1.3. The Excel 0.09, but actually 0.07. MSD is a 10, but really a 0.08. So let's do this. And then this Fast is it's a 0.03. And then if you want to check the inside windings, you just check, you have to dial it up to 20K. .35, 9.7, 5.4, 10, 8. So since these two are about the same, we'll switch them like that. 10, 8. We can cross pull the other side. 3, 5, 9, 10, 8. So these two are basically the same as far as we are a 10, 10, 8, 8, 1.2, 1.5. So this one has slightly more resistance in the inner windings, but it has lower resistance across the poles. So we can call these basically the same. What's the improvement? This one's newer. This one has been working for a long time. So it's probably close to failing. There's no more liquid in here. These are liquid. So the liquid boiled out and leaked down, got all inside the car. It's still functioning, but it's going to fail. So if we were to go by the if we are to go by the path if we are going by the path of least resistance, it's this one. So less resistance means more voltage coming out of this thing. So do we want to start with the hottest coil or start with the one that's basically the same as we got? And I think I'm going to just bump up to this one for now, and we'll run it and see how it does. And then we can work our way up to the hottest coil. So the ballast resistor is an inline resistor that's on this car. And so what it does is it steps down the voltage from 12 volts to about 7 or 8 coming out of this side. So even though it's a 12 volt coil, and it says 12 volt coil, you're really not putting 12 volts to it. You can, but the more voltage you hit in there, the more voltage coming out. And what happens is if you put too much voltage in there, it'll burn it up. How long will it last? Nobody knows. But you can see on the Bertone X, if you're racing, remove the resistor. If you're just a normal driver, keep the resistor in place. Why would you remove it if you're racing? Because if you blow it up and you're racing, then you just replace it. If you're not, you better carry a spare. So the higher the lower the resistance, the higher the voltage. The higher the voltage, the bigger spark plug gap you can run, which increases your spark, which may increase your volumetric efficiency. So there's a trade-off there. Is any one of these better than the other? It depends on what you're looking at. It depends on what your goal is. If you just want the hottest spark ever, run this. I don't know how long it will last, even with a resistor. This one has lasted for almost 40 years, and it still functions. Is it functioning at 100%? I don't know. There's probably a way to test them, but I don't have any of that type of equipment. Sorry, this is in the way. I broke a light. We're going to fix that later. So I just tuned up the car, got the timing set again, and I took this distributor out. So now we just need to pick one. I really want to go with this one and see what it does. Okay, let's do it. So they all fit in here, and all we really have to do is tighten it up. All right, I'll bring y'all back in just a minute. So this was the old distributor. I cleaned it up, tuned it up a little bit, cleaning all the contacts and stuff. It's electronically fired. It's not a points distributor. It's got vacuum advanced that functions. And then it has the angled cap. And what we have down here is the Vick Auto electronic distributor. So it has its own control module attached to the distributor. So everything's controlled internally as far as advance and those things. And my meter's turning off. This one came with the straight up cap, but even with it's about an inch taller than the old unit. The benefit is you can reach down here now and loosen and tighten the hold down nut. You don't have to take this off anymore. But you can see that I had to beat on this and reshape it so I could get this cap in here. It's a tight fit. The other thing you have to do is you have to connect it. So this is my hot lead from my ballast resistor. Car's off. And then it came with a weather pack plug, but I'm not using a weather pack because you have to take it and attach it directly to the distributor. You remove the cable from the spark box that plugged into the old distributor, and then you have to use this black wire that comes across from ECU, and then coming up from the bottom of the wiring harness is a brown and white wire. Brown and white is for your tachometer. Everything else from the spark box gets disconnected. So there's only two wires coming out now. The hot lead that goes to the ballast resistor, and then the ground that comes down here and attaches to the car. So all this other stuff is wired up out of the way. We're not even going to need it. We'll leave it like this for now. So when I set the timing with the old coil, I was at about 6 degrees advance. And then when you rev it up, it was revving up. I got it set at about 32, 33 degrees before top dead center at 3,000 RPM. So there's a lot of throw in this thing. It goes from 6 at idle all the way to 32 or 33 at 3,000 RPM. So this one has this distributor has about 24 degrees of advance built in. The old distributor had about 15 degrees advance built in. So I had it set at 15 and I was running it up to about 30. But I like to set timing according to advance specs. So whatever the max advance is on the distributor, you set it to the max advance you want on your engine, and then you just leave the bottom end alone. So now I just have to wire this thing up and then plug it in, and everything should fire back up this time. We'll see. There was a learning curve on getting this new distributor hooked up. If you plug in the spark box wire that the tach connects to, it doesn't make power. It doesn't fire at all. If you unplug the ECU cable, it doesn't run at all. It makes spark but no fuel. So I had to trace out and find the tach lead and then just hook it up by itself. Don't plug it into the spark box. So the new distributor has, or the new coil came with 10 millimeter nuts. Well, they're 6 mil, but they're 10 mil on the outside. Set this in here. I want to say the good part about, well, you can change the nuts out yourself, but now that everything's 10 millimeter socket, I don't have to run back and forth and grab a bunch of 8 and, you know, I don't know. I like it. Oh, I ran some temps on that on that coil when I was messing around. I got up to about 110 degrees. I don't know if this one's going to get hotter because it runs more voltage, but we'll find out. So this is the connector for all of this stuff. And it's easier to just plug it in now. And then we hook up our hot lead from the control box. And then we'll take care of zip ties and everything else after we're finished. So if we unplug this, if we turn this off, so we're not throwing juice anymore. Now the distributor is no longer connected. And we can unplug this is the hot lead coming from the spark box. So this is just 12 volts. And then if we read this ballast resistor, It's about a 0.09. It's 1.1, but slide 02, so anywhere between 0.08 to 1.0 is normal for what they run on these cars. And so what that's going to do is it's going to step down the power going into the coil. It helps extends its lifespan. So if we turn that on, and we switch over to voltage, so we ground out our meter. On this side of the resistor, we are 12 volts. On this side of the resistor, we are 12 volts. At the coil, we are 12 volts. On the other side of the coil, we are 12 volts. And so what's going to happen is, what should happen is when this ballast resistor heats up, the voltage going to the distributor should reduce. You go full voltage when you start up the car, and then as the car heats up, the resistor lowers the voltage. In theory, if it's functioning correctly. I want this like this. Actually, I want it to come over that and plug in here like this. Let me move some of this stuff and we should be able to make some noise. I will probably opt for the 90-degree distributor cap. It'll give me some more room. But for now, this one is functional, even though it's a little wedged. I don't mind beating on parts that nobody sees. Cords are out of the way. Hit it, sweetheart. So instead of 12 volts, we have 12 volts on this side. 12.9, 13 volts. We run over to the coil and we're about 11, 10 and a half. It might drop a little bit lower as the car warms up. Again, I forgot to hit the record button, but we've been running this for about 15 minutes, maybe more. And this coil is, I want to say, room temperature, 98, 93 degrees on the distributor. I mean on the coil, sorry. I got distributors on the brain. So I'm going to zip tie these wires out of the way, I don't want them accidentally getting rubbed. And I don't currently have the condenser hooked up. I'm not running a radio, so I don't really need it. It's mostly for radio signal interference modulation, but the current clarion is non-functioning. So, I mean, it turns on and makes static, and you can sometimes hear a radio station, but that's something else for a later date. So I think that's it for coil install, distributor wiring on this new distributor. I know I kept mixing up coil and distributor in my words, but it's okay. I think you understand what I'm talking about. I did take it on a 30-mile trip the other day. It was pretty good. It didn't break. So, it didn't break. Had a bunch of stuff come loose, but, you know, that's okay. Shakedown runs are shakedown runs. I'm going to cut it, call it, quit it, and I'm going to try something else, and I'll bring y'all back if it works out.